As someone who's owned real estate on 4 different continents and someone who maintains a portfolio of property across numerous different countries today, I'm often asked not only how do I maintain my properties that I live in when I'm not there, but from an investment point of view, how do you make sure that you're not getting ripped off? How do you make sure that you're getting the best deal? Today, I'm going to share with you some of my best tips for managing properties overseas. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson, and what we do here at Nomad Capitalist is we help people who are successful entrepreneurs and investors diversify themselves overseas. We have a lot of content about lowering your taxes legally through offshore companies, diversifying your cash with offshore bank accounts, getting second passports, and today I want to talk about investing overseas. There are a lot of opportunities, and what people often ask me is, how do I invest overseas without getting ripped off? How do I make sure I'm getting the right person to manage my property, if it's an investment or just someone to check on it if I'm not there, if it's my second home? Do I need to speak the local language? Do people speak English? How do I make sure that I'm getting a good deal? And what I found, I've talked a lot about maintaining empty homes. I have a portfolio of properties that I use and that my friends and my team members can use when they're in these places in cities like Bogota, Kuala Lumpur, Montenegro, Tbilisi, Georgia, and more in the pipeline. These are places where I personally live. And when I haven't had so many problems, I've talked about how I haven't had really any problems with safety, keeping people out, keeping things maintained. And I've talked about that in other videos about maintaining empty homes. It's a bit of organizational work, but it's relatively straightforward, and more so than it would be in the United States or Australia or anywhere else, where there's a lot of different bills and a lot of moving parts. There are a lot fewer moving parts in a lot of other countries' property markets. But let's talk about investors. You want to make an investment in one of these markets or a different market. It's a good opportunity to potentially get a second residence permit, get a second passport, higher yields, higher returns. Some of these foreign markets that we talk about have not gone down in years. Even as markets ebb and flow, they have been steady gainers. And so there's a lot of opportunities. But the concern is, are foreigners charged more? Because as we know, you have to make money in real estate when you buy. You can't just rely on the goodwill of the market to skyrocket and to give you returns on a bad buy. If you do a bad buy, you're not going to do well with a property investment, okay? And obviously, once you have that good buy, you want to make sure that you're not running into problems where you have tenants, screwing the place up and basically, raising your cost of acquisition substantially, because you got to go and do a bunch of renovations more than just normal wear and tear. And so what I found in my years of actually investing in different property markets. A lot of people talk about theory, right? I actually do this, and there are times that I've had some minor mistakes. I haven't really had any fatal mistakes, but what I found is investing in property overseas is often like investing in property at home. Managing property overseas is often like managing property at home. Let me explain what I mean. A couple years ago, I had some of our non-American clients who were looking for high-yield investments. And one of the places that popped up in our research was where I'm from, in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, not the suburbs where I was from, but some of the up-and-coming areas. Sometimes you could get people who would rent in these areas that had government subsidies. And so basically, the government was paying a good part of the rent. Very low prices, pretty good yields. And so, as a test, I went in, put not a lot of money, I bought 2 houses very, very cheaply, and that came with tenants. So it was a turnkey kind of deal. And I said, I'm going to see what happens, and if it works, then I'll tell people to do it. If it doesn't work, then I'll tell people it didn't work. Well, fast forward to the end, it didn't work. And now this is a country that I'm from. I'm from the United States. I'm from that particular area. Now, obviously the people that I was working with in this up-and-coming area were different than people that if I was buying rental properties in the most affluent suburb, right? You have a different kind of ecosystem in this area. But what I learned is that being able to communicate with people, being able to not be ripped off or taken advantage of, is not a function of where the property is. It's a matter of who the people are. Having the right people is what you need, and so I've proven that. I found great people in countries all around the world. The country that I'm from, I couldn't find good people. Now, some of you have invested in the U.S. and you found the good people, and that's good. I made the high yields for a while. I actually did, but then I had property managers who just couldn't get the job done. They were having me fix things, and I just never had very good communication. Then I had to get rid of a tenant, and it was just a mess. It was just a lot of work. And on top of that, in the United States, there's so many different fees, there's so many different taxes. The lawn care police are coming around and finding you $100 because your grass is this much too high. It's just a lot of work on top of all the problems with the people. So what I've done when I've gone overseas, typically to avoid that problem and to avoid being ripped off, is I'll often start with a good lawyer. This is one of the things we do here at Nomad Capitalist. We're always looking for good lawyers in countries all around the world. We've got a database of people who we've worked with, who hasn't been able to deliver, who delivers but slowly, who delivers but poorly, and it sometimes takes a while to find the best lawyer. What I found, though, is if you find a locally based, internationalized attorney in a city, in a country, that can often be the gateway to finding a lot of the other vendors that you need. So I'm not going into a city. Now, a lot of the markets that I'm going into, they're not as developed, and you don't have a lot of big international firms. But you're seeing some of the countries, even Georgia, for example, has some of the big international firms coming in. Dackert, or on the accounting side, the Big Four, other law firms that are very international. I generally don't work with them. And what's been interesting is I've had numerous people come to me who are very successful business owners and say, I hired the Big Four and I was very disappointed, or they made a mistake and it cost me a lot of money. I have avoided those big firms, the McKinsey type firms if you're doing consulting. You pay a lot, you don't get a lot. But what you don't want, obviously, is just a guy who's got a shingle hanging when you're walking down the street who maybe doesn't speak your language. When I first went to Georgia, I was staying on Agmashinabeli Street. This is many years ago. Agmashinabeli Street was renovated by the government back in, I think, 2012. It looks like Disneyland now, basically. And when the government renovated it, all the local Georgians sold their properties at low prices. And as it got renovated, basically the Turks started buying these properties up. And now the prices on that street are very, very high. And so if you walk down Agmashinabeli Street in central Tbilisi, you will see a lot of Turkish attorneys. I remember going in and talking to some of those Turkish attorneys. Many of them didn't know what they were talking about. They were largely serving people who were coming from Turkey, doing investments, becoming residents, whatever. And they certainly didn't speak very good of English. So I had to go and I had to double my efforts and find a couple different attorneys who were very international and focused, but who were local, and they understood local things. And what I have done generally over the years is I have found the attorneys that are best for me and that understand what I'm trying to accomplish and kind of mold them to how I work. It's very rare that you're going to find someone who entirely gets it. There are a few countries where I have lawyers who are members of the bar in, let's say, the United States. They don't live in the United States. Maybe they were there for university. They just joined the bar, whatever. So they maybe have a more international perspective in terms of, work processes. But you want an attorney with an international clientele. You may have to do some training of them in terms of how you want things done. To use my Georgia example, one thing that is sometimes frustrating for folks from the West is everything is always discussed multiple times in Georgia and other countries, where if you have an appointment with an attorney, they're going to call, maybe you want to change it to 2, maybe you want to come on Tuesday instead. And so you have to kind of train people how you want to work. But if you can have an attorney who has a good relationship with different vendors, they will often turn you on to good real estate agents. I found 2 good real estate agents in my entire time in Georgia. How many? 7 years now. 2. One does not speak very good English. She has very good connections in the market in terms of locally, because her husband is somewhat of a famous person, and so she gets a lot of people with valuable city center properties who will hire her and pay her a good commission. And so then the attorney and she work together and they find the deals. I have another agent who is a very good English speaker and very aggressive, but was very hard to find. And so I had to get introduced again. I think that we found locally. That was not through an attorney. But most of the connections you can find at a place are through an attorney, because the attorney gets a lot of feedback on who's good, who's not. People don't want to mess with an attorney. They don't want to let an attorney down. And so do you need to speak the local language? Generally, no. What I found is when you have a good relationship with, again, not an international firm, but a local attorney with international outlook, with international clients, they will often be willing to help you for a rather reasonable price, work with other vendors. And so, I even had attorneys helping me with cabinets for my home in Tbilisi, and they would help me negotiate and translate for that. And so they're often willing to help you. Some of the vendors they will connect you with will speak English, and so that is certainly something that you can just work with them directly. I'm not entirely sure that speaking English is necessarily the best factor for success. I've got someone right now in Colombia who's doing a renovation on my apartment. This is probably the best person to do renovations I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I'm getting excellent details. I mean, the quality of the work, the measurements, I mean, everything is really outstanding. The person's English is marginal, right? And so sometimes we communicate directly, other times we're communicating through someone locally, and they're helping me manage that project, and they're making sure the person's on their toes and they're doing the job. So I think an issue of presence, having a good attorney is important. Here's what I found, right? I have not had so many problems on the renovation side, the property management side. Some countries just don't have a lot of property management, but generally in some of these emerging countries, if you find a good real estate agent, they may not offer property management, but they will offer it to you as something if you ask. They may not offer it because nobody locally wants it. If you live in one of these emerging countries and you own rental property, you may just say, I'll manage it myself. There may not be much demand. But if you ask the agent that was referred to you to help, they might do it for you. And I've seen cases like that before. So really the areas where I see people struggling the most are on the buy side, not on the management side, not on the renovations or any of that stuff. Buying and selling is the biggest challenge. Selling, because a lot of agents just aren't that good. All they can do is sell you stuff, and they're going to always try and lowball you when they sell you. So you want to make sure you're getting in at a good number so that you can sell the property with some level of ease when you want to exit. On the buy side is the biggest issue. If you just go online and Google properties, in a lot of markets you're going to overpay. I just talked to someone the other day saying, he was looking at apartments in Lisbon on an English language website for 3,000 euros a month. And he said, I thought I heard there's plenty of stuff for like 1,000 euros a month. And lo and behold, yes, our real estate team has just literally the week before rented someone something of similar quality to what this guy is looking for 1,000 euros a month. So if you're going online and looking at stuff in English, that's when you're often going to pay more. If you're doing stuff remotely, that's when you're going to pay more. That works in the US, it works in the UK and Australia and all these developed countries, probably in Germany and some of those too. But even in some of those markets, I get offers all the time from, people who develop ski properties in Austria. It's expensive. And yet I know people in Austria who say, Andrew, that's like 25% too expensive. So, a lot of these things that you see online are turnkey. They're marketed to foreigners. When I bought my property in Bogota, certainly I got a deal because we worked with local Spanish-speaking agents. That requires a cultural adjustment, and again, it requires often that connection to a lawyer who has vetted people for you. Sometimes I'll go in and vet people myself, and then we'll share that with the people that we're helping. But there is some vetting required. I think local vendors are often better to the American or the Brit who goes into a market and opens up a shop. You're going to pay more for that. And so it's a matter of, do you want to pay more on the buy side? Do you want to pay a premium for a website with nice pictures for someone who's from your culture? Or do you want to work with an attorney and make that investment, or work with someone like Nomad Capitalist who does all the groundwork and then says, hey, here's the guy that delivers the property at a deal? Either approach could be good. Some people just say, you know what, I want to invest in Colombia. If I pay 20% too much, so be it. I want it to be easy. I personally, when it comes to buying a $200,000 property, don't want to waste 40 grand. And so, especially if you're buying property for citizenship or residence by investment, you may be buying something, if it's turnkey, that has a 10 to 30% commission baked in. I would much rather rely on my attorneys to connect me with people who have good deals and who can manage the entire process. That's what I've done to keep any property investment deals running smoothly. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.